All right, everybody, this is Come Follow Me for this week, 4th through the 10th. Hopefully you enjoyed General Conference over last weekend and watch it again. I'd encourage you to go back and watch all those videos again to keep learning from what our current prophets and apostles are telling us. So for this week in Come Follow Me, we're doing sections 111, 112, 113, and 114. So 4 sections. They're short sections, which is kind of nice to put them all together. But a couple things that are really important in the Come Follow Me lessons this week that they talk about is realizing that these sections, of course, right after they're right after the sections of the dedication of the Kirtland Temple, but really these sections were a while time-wise after the dedication of the temple. And at this point in the church's history, there's a lot of problems, a lot of issues. The church is into a lot of debt. They're having struggles and challenges, which is kind of contrasting from all the blessings that they got during the time when the Kirtland Temple was dedicated. So it's interesting how those have contrasted with each other. But it's important to realize as we learn from these, just as with the early saints, that as they were trying to seek, why is this happening, what's going on, it's important to realize that while trials in this life are pretty much guaranteed, you're going to have tests and trials, especially the more you live the gospel. There are other tests and trials that sometimes will come up, but they're not necessarily a bad thing, that they can be there to help us for our good. Sometimes we have trials and problems in our life because we made bad decisions, because we did something that ended up with a consequence that was bad. That sometimes happens, and we have nobody to blame but ourselves for some of those events. Sometimes things happen as no fault of our own or no choice of our own. Bad things sometimes come upon us. So this is so important, especially in our day and age, really, to look at, because not only do we have to realize that trials are here to help us, that Heavenly Father uses trials to not only test us and to prove us and whether we are going to keep his commandments or not, but he also blesses us through trials. It gives us more of an opportunity to bless him. Anytime you're going through a trial, especially if it was a choice made by someone else, doesn't necessarily matter the circumstances of that choice. But if somebody makes a choice and it negatively impacts your life, it's important to realize that you have more claim on the atonement of Jesus Christ to help you in your life. So you can pray and say, Heavenly Father, I need extra help because I'm dealing with something that somebody else made a decision and it's negatively impacting my life. That is where you can now ask Heavenly Father for more help through that atonement, basically. So that's a plus, that's a bonus that he's here to help us. It's interesting to look at most of the time when we talk about tragedies and problems with the pioneers, we think of the Martin Willie Harris. Sorry, I just said that wrong. But that company of handcarts, the Martin and Willie Handcart Company, sorry. So anyways, I mean, there's tons of stories of people that died and, they froze to death and all kinds of challenges and problems that they experienced as they came across the plains. I believe that video, there's a church video that kind of talks about the Willie and Martin Handcart Company and how they struggled. They really struggled. But what's fascinating is while they may be seen as one of the hardest treks west that any of the groups ever had, they did not lose any less people on that trek than any other group, which is pretty remarkable considered what they experienced. So it's definitely a good example of how the Heavenly Father can help us. And from what I understand, a lot of the people who were on that trek said that they would not necessarily experience all that again, but they were grateful for the things they learned because of the challenges they faced. So some really good stuff in there, and that's what the section 111 is talking about. Is like it says in Come Follow Me, the Lord can order all things for my good. So just because things seem bad doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing for you. The Heavenly Father can help you and bless you. So that's where putting our faith in him really makes a big difference. Are we willing to submit, just like a child would to an adult? A child would say, I don't know all the things that are going on, but my mommy and daddy know, and I love them. I know they will help me. And so I put my faith in what they know and what they understand, and I will do what they say, even though I don't fully understand it. That's the kind of thing that we need to do when we come to Heavenly Father, is realize that it's important for us to have that kind of faith with him. And it's interesting because in section 112, the main theme that we're talking about is that the Lord will lead those who humbly seek his will. Now, in here, it's important to realize that when we have an experience where we need guidance, maybe we don't fully understand what to do, or there's changes or things happening in the world. So seeking the will of the Lord and being patient with that and being willing to accept his will and move forward with what he says is important. And the more that we are willing to do that is important. I think sometimes when tragedies happen, we go to Heavenly Father and say, why did this happen to me? What happened? Help me understand this. But basically in the back of our mind, we're saying, but don't tell me anything I don't want to hear. Don't make this worse. Don't let me know that there's more coming or something like that. We want to know, but we don't really want to know in some ways when tragedy strikes or we have trials or problems. So it's important for us to say, I need to seek the Lord's will. I might not want to go through with this. I might not want to experience what I'm experiencing, but I need to seek the Lord's will. And that means putting your opinions and ideas aside and be willing to move forward with what Heavenly Father says. And that's not easy to do. It does take some faith, and it's just not easy, to do. I've had to experience that in my own life, of being willing to say, okay, I'm willing to do what Heavenly Father says. I don't like the situation I'm in, but I need to fulfill the Lord's will, Now, section 113 has, it's not a big one, but there's some profound stuff in here, because in section 113, we talk about a prophecy from Isaiah. So something that happened, hundreds of years, even before the Book of Mormon. This is a long time before the Book of Mormon even started, which started around 600 BC. We're talking, about 150, almost 200 years, I think, before, when Isaiah was around, and he had a prophecy of what was known as a root of Jesse, or a rod of Jesse, and that he would be a servant that would help gather the people in the last days, those kinds of things. Section 113 helps us understand that Joseph Smith is in fulfillment of that prophecy of Isaiah, that it was Joseph that Isaiah was talking about. In fact, maybe what Isaiah saw Joseph in vision, and he wrote this down in using words like the root of Jesse or things like that, talking about descendants of Jesse, as a way to conceal maybe who it was, because he maybe knew who Joseph Smith was. At least he could have known that, but he wasn't to write, oh, there's a guy in the latter days that's going to be named Joseph Smith that's going to do this. That would be a little too obvious. So that it was kind of cryptic in a way, but there's the fulfillment of the prophecy. So that's a really fun thing that we get to look at for Come Follow Me this week. But realize that it's important for us to be humble and have patience with our Heavenly Father. In today's world, with how crazy things are, this is probably more applicable today than ever before, to realize that as we are going through challenges and trials and things, and there's a lot more still to come. We're just in the beginning stages of it. There's still a lot more to come. That it's important for us to understand that we need to be willing to listen and take the time to pay attention to what the Spirit is saying, and take time to understand that the way the world wants things to be done isn't always the best way to do it. In fact, most likely, if the world has a certain path they want to go down, it's most likely one of the worst ways to do it. You can look back in history, and there's not many times where the world got it right. Most of the time, they did a good job, but they didn't quite get it right all the way. There are side effects or secondary problems or the things. So There's a lot of challenges with that, but when you look at how the Lord wants us to do things, it is different than the world. Sometimes it is extremely opposite from the world, and sometimes it's just slightly different from the world. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's important to realize that the priorities and the processes that the Lord uses isn't the same ones that the world uses. And that it's important for us to make sure that we understand those differences and realize that the way the Lord wants it done is the more appropriate way to do it. And we can look at the Word of Wisdom or other things like that as a classic example of realizing that when we follow what Heavenly Father gives us, that things improve and things go better. So not necessarily the same as the world, but better. We end up getting a better result than the world does. So that's some important things to learn for this week. So read these sections and follow along and just realize, how can I not only be more humble, be more patient, and follow that, seek more the Spirit in my life, but also take these principles and realize, how can we take what we've just learned in General Conference and pull that together to help us better our life. There is a theme. There are trends. And so in fact, there's one thing I'd absolutely recommend you do is rewatch General Conference. And I want you to take everything they talk about literally, like the message, the point they want to get across. If they're talking about spiritually improving your life, they literally mean you need to do things to improve your spirituality. So they're not, they use stories and they use things like that to explain concepts, but realize the point they want to get across is very literal to us. And I think too many people think of it as a General Conference is a great time to feel the Spirit, and that's wonderful, but they don't really take literally what they're telling us to do. So take it literal, take the message literal, what they're really trying to tell us to do. And you'll start to realize that they are getting promptings of what is coming, and they are trying to help us to be prepared. So literally do what they ask us to do will help out a lot. So thanks for watching. Stick around for more Come Follow Me in Doctrine and Covenants. And I'm totally excited for Come Follow Me for next year because it's the Old Testament. So much to talk about, so many notes. It's wild. I'm already having to start preparing for that because I got so many notes to share, especially in the book of Pearl of Great Price. So a lot of fun stuff to share. So please stay tuned. Share these videos with your friends and family. Go up and look at our videos on the Articles of Faith, as well as I have several scriptural challenges that I've released this year. So go check those out too and take some of those challenges to help improve your understanding of the gospel. And if you have any thoughts or notes on these sections, please leave them in the comments. Would love to hear from you as well.